On September 13th, 2009, 19-year-old Taylor Swift arrived at the red carpet for the Video Music Awards in a glass, pumpkin-shaped horse-drawn carriage. Wearing a glittering silver gown, Taylor was in the process of crossing over from country singer to mainstream pop star. Tonight, Taylor was Cinderella and the VMAs were the ball, where she planned to make her official debut into the world of pop music. Taylor was nominated in a single category, Best Video by a Female Artist, for You Belong With Me off her sophomore album Fearless. Other nominees in this category included Kelly Clarkson, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Pink, and of course, Beyoncé, who was tipped to win the award for Single Ladies. The first award of the night, Taylor Swift was announced the winner for Best Video by a Female Artist. She made her way to the stage, looking shocked and excited, and was presented the award by Shakira and Taylor Lautner.
Thank you so much. I always dreamed about what it would be like to maybe win one of these someday, but I never actually thought that would happen. I sing country music, so thank you so much for giving me a chance to win a VMA award.
As Taylor went to continue, she was met with an unexpected surprise. Kanye West, who was nominated for 4 awards that night, sprang from his front row seat in the audience, rushed to the stage, and grabbed the microphone out of Taylor's hands.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
The crowd booed, and Beyoncé sat in the audience, mouth agape in horror. As Kanye handed the microphone back to Taylor, the 19-year-old country singer who had just won her first VMA stood there stiff and silent before the program cut to a pre-recorded segment between Eminem and Tracy Morgan. Kanye returned to his seat, where he was chewed out by Pink and later escorted out of the event. Hours later, Beyoncé won Video of the Year for Single Ladies and called Taylor back on stage to let her finish her speech. This was the night that would change the course of entertainment and pop culture, including Taylor's career for over a decade to come. From Centennial World, I'm Lauren Meisner, and this is Infinite Scroll, a podcast about internet culture, the creator economy, and how social media is shaping Gen Z. Welcome back to Infinite Scroll, everyone, and welcome to my first co-host of the new pod, Crystal Andrews.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so we are recording in real life on video. This is your first time co-hosting Infinite Scroll with video.
Yes, I've done podcasts with you before, and I think with Geordie before. Not on video, though. It's intimidating to have the camera in here, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's definitely a different energy for sure. But do you want to give people a quick intro into who you are for anyone that does not know?
Yes, I think some fans of Zee Feed definitely listen to Infinite Scroll. It's one of my most recommended podcasts, of course. But I am the founder and editor of Zee Feed, which is a feminist news, pop culture and culture commentary and analysis site. And we cover all kinds of politics, economics, social justice, but absolutely big things that matter to young women like Taylor Swift.
I was going to say including Taylor Swift.
Including Taylor Swift.
Yes, so Crystal is joining me today. She's actually in town. She moved to Hobart recently, and she's in Sydney for Eras. We're both going to Eras. We have our friendship bracelets on. We're actually both going Saturday and Sunday night, which is going to tie in a little bit to today's episode, like our involvement, I guess, in the Swiftie nation.
Our experience.
Yes.
I think we should clarify that we are
Swifties.
Fans. We are Swifties.
Yes. I'm like...
Important context.
Yes. Yes, I'm like a moderate Swiftie. I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience being a Taylor Swift fan later in the episode, but just starting this off, we are both Taylor Swift fans. We have been like all in on Eras this weekend. You know, Crystal staying over. We are both going 2 nights in a row. We are doing the friendship bracelets. We went to a Taylor Swift themed cafe in my suburb yesterday for breakfast. Like, we're going all in.
It's actually been a really big weekend, and we haven't been to the concert yet.
I know.
We haven't been to see anything yet, but it's been so intense.
Yeah.
And the vibes are definitely all taking over Sydney right now. It is just... There's girls everywhere. There's like sequins, sparkles, glitters everywhere. It's a very fun vibe here at the moment.
Yeah, it's really cute. It kind of reminds me of Barbie movie.
Yes.
Like the frenzy around that. Yes. But anyways, as always, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, guys. It helps the podcast grow, and I love reading your words of encouragement. It just makes my day. Please also sign up to our newsletter, which is called Infinite Scroll as well. On Wednesdays, we send out a commentary article about a trend, creator, drama, or news. And on Fridays, Mondays, we round up the 5 biggest think pieces on the internet from that week. And also join our Geneva group, which is also called Infinite Scroll, where you can chat to other people about internet culture, creator drama, and tea, and you can chat with me as well. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple reviews that we got. We're actually recording this really early, so if you are about to leave me a review this week and I don't get to it, that's why, because this is recorded like almost a full 7 days before I normally record these episodes. But Tara said, "Thank you, Lauren, for blessing us with another great ep. Loving the little life/business updates too." Thank you, Tara. She's an OG listener. And then Jupiter Bloodsaw 3011 on YouTube said, "Great ending, well put. I hope your channel gets more insights and views." Thank you. I never know with these comments if they're like bots or not.
That seems real.
But
to
I
me.
think
I think that's real.
Like the beginning sounds real.
Yeah, I also hope the channel gets more insights and views. Endorsed.
Thank you. Well, the 2009 VMAs was a crucial moment in the trajectory of Taylor Swift's career and the Swiftie fandom. It wasn't the origin. Taylor has always harnessed the power of fandom since the beginning of her career, being one of the first country artists ever to use the internet to promote her music in its early days. In 2005, Taylor joined MySpace one day before her then label Big Machine Records was inaugurated. She used MySpace to market her music and connect with her listeners, racking up over 45 million listens of her songs on the platform. Scott Borchetta, the CEO of Big Machine, used this as proof to country radio stations to convince them to play her music. Rolling Stone writer Brittany Spanos claims that Taylor's social media use is how she grew her fan base. Quote, "She was using Tumblr way past its prime. Twitter. She's now on TikTok, commenting on people's videos." Taylor's debut album was what the music industry calls a sleeper success, an album that has had consistent sales over a long period of time. The sleeper success of debut feels like foreshadowing for her entire career to come. Because one of the most interesting things about Taylor's career that critics, journalists, academics, and music enthusiasts have spent copious amounts of time mulling on is how is it possible that Taylor Swift's success has remained so steady? In a piece for ID, journalist Michael Craig calls Taylor's popularity and longevity ceaseless fame and global influence unseen since the 20th century. Taylor's debut album was wildly successful in the US, helping her build an American fan base of country music listeners. But it was her second album, Fearless, that kicked off Swiftie Nation globally, especially her songs Love Story and You Belong With Me, as they were played on pop radio rather than just country stations in places like the United Kingdom, Ireland, Brazil, Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, and India. The term Swiftie gained popularity in the late 2000s. The first documented instance of Taylor addressing the term was in 2012 during an interview with Vivo. She explained that her fans call themselves Swifties and said she thought that was adorable. Taylor's relationship with the Swifties is what many attribute to her cultural relevance. Journalist Laura Kelly for The Atlantic Daily says that Taylor, quote, understands the power of the group experience, where she puts herself in the same figurative friendship group as her fans to build that parasocial relationship. Taylor interacts directly with her fans by sending them gifts, replying to them on social media, hand-selecting them to attend meet and greets, and even stalking them on social media, which her fans have dubbed Taylorking. And one of the most significant things that she did early on is hand-selecting, not just for meet and greets, but hand-selecting super fans that her mom would pick out of the crowd at concerts to these, I think she called them secret sessions, yes, where they would like have previews, I suppose, to her unreleased albums yet.
And it's a trend actually that's still continuing now with the 22 hat, you know, about the 22 yes, hat. So either Andrea Swift or Scott Swift, her parents obviously, will scan the crowd, keep an eye out for anyone who looks like they, you know, have really gone above and beyond, diehard fan, will personally hand select them to be the one who receives the hat from Taylor Swift when she performs 22. So they'll like get a position right up the front of the stage.
Oh my God.
She'll like do her little choreography, take the hat off, give it to them, have a little exchange with them. And it's like this very coveted, obviously, moment because only one person per performance will get it. But they've done that throughout the entirety of the Eras tour, and they're continuing it in Australia as well. They're still hand-selecting fans from the crowd to get a special experience.
It's so wild because she's so good at building the Swiftie fandom, and it's in such a unique way. Dr. Georgia Carroll, who did her PhD on the Swiftie fandom and that relationship between Taylor Swift and her fans, I was watching her keynote speech at what's it called? Swiftposium?
Swiftposium, yes.
Recently, and she was explaining this dynamic, and she was saying how she didn't quite use the word manipulative, but that's essentially what she was getting at, that, you know, Taylor and her team foster all of these experiences for the Swifties where they essentially reward the best fan, and they put this hierarchy into the Swiftie fandom themselves without, I think, often us as Swifties or fans realizing that that's what they're doing, because they're rewarding like the best fans, the biggest fans, the ones who are showing undying support for her no matter what she's doing or what's happening. And it's such an interesting dynamic because it's these little moments that the Swifties die for, is like that connection with her, that relationship with her, that ability to be like the famous fan, which Jordy and I actually did an episode on famous fans a few months ago, I believe it was. So go back and listen to that. But that's kind of what they do here, is they help these fans become famous fans within the fandom by like rewarding them for being the best.
Yes, and you really can't understate how early she was to all of this, because this is kind of a normal conversation now in 2024. Like, yes, there are heaps of celebrities, not even just musical artists, who will interact with their fans and, you know, DM with fans and repost things. Like, there's a lot of engagement, but this is like early social media. Like, we are talking about MySpace.
Yeah.
This is going back a long way. Like, it truly is. It is a very innovative way to have that fan engagement that she has maintained the whole time, like no matter how big she has gotten. And it really is what made this more like a community as opposed to just a fan base or an audience.
And these session selections, wait, is that what it's called? Session selections? Secret sessions.
Sessions.
Were often held like at her home. That is so wild. But another thing that Dr. Georgia Carroll was saying is that for a lot of fans, the reason why they become entrenched in a fandom for a specific TV show or an artist or whatever is because they're actually trying to create their own content around that storyline or that person that kind of goes against the machine in a way, against the corporate, where they want to interact with that like their desired fan object outside of having to constantly spend money or within the confines of the storylines that are provided to them or whatever it is. Whereas it's the opposite for Swifties. They are part of the fandom to engage with the corporation behind Taylor Swift.
To get those opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Zoya Razashik of The Independent writes that Taylor, quote, remains at the forefront of delivering fan-based experiences to cultivate an ever-growing following. Whether it's personal invites to the singer's house for album listening parties, aka secret sessions, or pre-show hangouts, she continues to put her fans first. And I think one of the biggest differences between Taylor and other artists, in my opinion, is that she does not show us the perils of international stardom. She does not complain publicly about how difficult it is to not have privacy or the logistics of her life. And I think that makes her seem, number one, really grateful for what she has and to her fans. And number two, like she genuinely enjoys being famous, and thus she genuinely enjoys interacting with her fans because her fans are the ones that made her famous. I think there's just so many mega celebrities who treat fame like a burden, and that sentiment really trickles into their fandom. And you as a fan end up feeling like a burden on your favorite celebrity now, whereas Taylor has been so good at making her fans feel like everything she does is for them because she just loves being famous and having fans. And I actually do think that is true.
Yeah, and I think her true passion for music, like she clearly is an incredibly creative person. I mean, the business of it all aside for a second, she's so creative. She obviously loves music and that enthusiasm is really contagious. Like you can see it in the behind the scenes, like, you know, documentaries that we get of the recording of albums or songs or whatever it is. You can tell she's actually psyched about it, and that makes the fans psyched about it. You can't help but, you know, lean into that enthusiasm.
Totally. Another generally accepted reason for Taylor's massive cultural impact is the universe she creates around her music, keeping her fans constantly connected to her as they help tell her story through different Easter egg hunts and ongoing analysis. Her fans turn everything Taylor does into a hypothetical archaeological dig.
Hey guys, it's Taylor Swift, and today I'm going to talk to you about Easter eggs. No, not the bunny pastel Easter eggs, although I really do love that aesthetic right now. I'm loving pastels. But yeah, Easter eggs that I'm going to talk to you about are the kind of cryptic message-sending Easter eggs.
This has contributed to extensive lore about Taylor and her world, and this lore strengthens the Swiftie community by creating a very clear divide between them versus us. If you know, you know, and if you don't, you're not in the fandom. And that's actually, we were talking about that because you put me in my place recently where I was saying something about like eras, and I was like, I don't know if I asked why it was called eras or why she's doing this tour now. I don't know. There was something, and you were like, it's because of this house.
Oh,
and then you sent me that diagram. I was like, oh, okay, Swiftie.
Yeah, like it is a real spectrum. You are a fan. Like you are absolutely undeniably a fan, enjoy the music, love the music. You're going to the tour and you're like, why is everyone, what's the deal with this house?
Yeah.
Where does this house come from? And even though I'm more along the Swiftie spectrum than you are, I'm more into it, but I've definitely never done like the Easter egg digs. Like I don't theorize about that stuff online, but I consume it and I look at the other stuff that other people make about what could be a secret meaning of or a special symbol. And so I know a little bit more about that than you, but there are definitely a lot of Swifties out there who know way more about it than me.
100%. The Swifties take this lore one step further by bringing it into real life, creating social bonds with other fans and expressing their fandom through what business scientists Brendan Canavan and Claire McCamley call postmodern consumerism. Bruce Arthur for the Toronto Star notes that this type of fandom is unique for a pop star, but not unique when compared to other types of fandoms. Quote, people like to frame Swifties as an extreme case, but it sort of functions the same way as in sports. Which is exactly what it is. Like if you think about sports fans and how much money they spend on their favorite sports team, all of the merch and memorabilia that they collect, it's so similar to how Taylor Swift fans function, like big Swifties.
And delving into the lore around Taylor Swift, I think it is a direct equivalent to like, okay, do you know the history of this sports club, going back through the years when this player was traded or this coach came on board, then when there was a good season, when we've had a bad season. I mean, I also am a sports girly and I have my favorite teams that I've followed for pretty much my whole life. And it is just like that. There is so much to know and so much knowledge around it that it's a really rich hobby. Like that's why these things are hobbies and not just things that we consume.
Yeah. In the case of the Eras Tour, this consumerism was largely driven by the Swifties. The sequin outfits, bedazzled makeup and hairstyles, the rhinestone cowboy boots, and of course the countless friendship bracelets are all things that Swifties decided are the right way to express your fandom at the Eras Tour. As Crystal herself writes for the Zee Feed newsletter, quote, Taylor Swift, the person, is not responsible for creating the extent of overconsumption we're seeing. Themed outfits and friendship bracelets are ideas that fans came up with on their own. There has never been an instruction from Brand Swift to do any of this. Confetti cannons go off at the end of the Eras concerts, but that's pretty normal for all kinds of big events. It's hardly an extraordinary source of pollution. Now, Crystal's newsletter was actually the inspiration for this entire episode, but not just because the content was on point, mostly because of the reaction to the content. And
I have such trauma. I did warn Lauren before we decided to really do this episode. I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Because it is a very intense subject. To wade into. It's very, very divisive. People have a lot of opinions, which is good. I mean, discussion about these things is fantastic. But yeah, it's been a scary week.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of explain what kind of reaction you received from writing this? So what was your newsletter about?
So the newsletter was it was a self-reflection really about going to the Eras tour, I'm someone who tries to practice conscious consumerism. I'm really careful about what I shop in terms of like fashion, homewares, beauty. I'm not a shopper. And that's an ethical and environmental decision I've made for my own life. So the newsletter was just a reflection on, okay, I'm going to the Eras tour and seeing all the amazing outfits and costumes and the friendship bracelets, really fighting that urge within myself to buy into all of it. Like, obviously, I've bought into some of it. I made like 20 friendship bracelets. And it really was a reflection on what it was like to internally, as a fan, struggle with, you know, the environmental impact that this might have. There was a lot of private support actually for the newsletter. I received a heap of emails, DMs, like people were texting me saying, oh my God, thank you for writing this. I've also been thinking about things and like grappling with it myself. So thank you for putting it into words. But they were all people who were saying, I would never talk about this publicly because I'm scared of the backlash or being criticized or being considered like branded as a hater, which obviously none of us are. We're fans.
Yeah.
The public support for it, there were a lot of people who engaged with the newsletter, who liked the social posts that we did about the newsletter and left really supportive comments. But there was also a very vocal rejection of the idea that we should do any self-reflection of the way we participate in the Swiftie fandom at all, or do any kind of critical thinking when it comes to the waste or the excess consumption that the Eras tour is kind of like connected with. The overwhelming theme of that criticism was that we should just let girls be girls, let girls have fun. And even if that enjoyment or that fun is destructive, that no critique could be tolerated because the most important thing is for girls to have fun. We are not going to think about anything else. That was really the underlying theme of like all the backlash that we got, it was wild. It was really wild to read because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I implicated myself in participating in it. I wasn't saying what you guys are doing is crazy. I don't do that. I was saying I do it too.
Yes. I think people take what they want from what they consume when it comes to if they feel they're part of a fandom like this and they are completely glossing over or ignoring the fact that you're saying like, I'm doing this too. I'm going to Eras. I made friendship bracelets. You know, this is a self-reflection. It reminds me again of the Barbie discourse. Any slight analysis of the Barbie movie that was not positive. I was part of that too with the Barbie movie. I was like, any little bit of criticism, I was like, fuck off, you just don't get it, because I loved the Barbie movie. So I get it. I'm part of the problem too. But I think that reminds me, like the backlash around your newsletter reminds me so much of that. Like no room for critical analysis. Women have had it really difficult. That's part of it. Like our interests are always trivialized. Yeah. So like, let me be a fangirl.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a real theme within some of the comments, some of the backlash around this as well, of kind of pointing to men's hobbies and like to bring it back to sport, as we were talking about before, saying, well, you know, why don't we do this to men's hobbies? Why don't we criticize this to sport and men's hobbies? Which is crazy because we're in media, we're online, in the media and online discourse. Sport is criticized all the time, as it should be. There was this real idea that we never ask men to self-reflect on how they participate in the things that they enjoy. But I don't agree with that. I think we ask men to do that all the time now. And if we're going to ask men to critically think about the environmental impact or the way that sports or other things contribute to toxic masculinity, if we're going to ask them to do that, then we should also do it when it comes to the things that we love too. I feel like that's only fair.
Yeah, I guess it's because people feel like men have gone unchecked for so long and they've been allowed to like sports and be super fans of sports teams or whatever they're super fans of. And it is only now starting to become like socially acceptable to be a fangirl. Like honestly, Eras I think is going to be a turning point for the perception of a fangirl.
I think actually the Women's World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, probably that came in like the year of the Barbie movie too. So I think those things really started to build this like environment where letting big groups of women express their joy at whatever it is that they wanted to enjoy was like very much welcomed. We had a really rough, 4-5 years in the country and in the world. And I think that is where this impulse to shut down any perceived criticism is coming from, because it's like, we just want to have fun, and this is a moment that girls can have fun in.
Yeah. I had a similar, not like the level of backlash that you received, of course, because I was just posting on my own personal story. It's just being like, I'm going to Taylor Swift. So basically, Crystal and I are going tonight with a brand. And so I posted that they sent us the tickets, and I was like, this is literally the best PR box I've ever received. And I had so many DMs from people being like, that is so ironic that you're going to be sent by a brand to Taylor Swift when you just like criticized her upcoming album. Because I had posted, what's it called? Poets.
Oh, the Tortured Poets Department.
Yeah. Tortured Poets Department.
The Tortured Poets Dead Society.
Something like that. I had posted on my stories when she announced that, just saying it kind of feels like this is too soon. Like, it feels like we're getting too much content all at once. And I understand the re-records are different than completely new albums, but it just feels like she's being overexposed right now. And we've talked about overexposure in celebrities on this podcast many times. That's a very dangerous place to be. And Taylor has already copped so much horrible media attention and harassment from the media over her career, and like, we're just at a dangerous point where people are going to start turning on her because she's
there before. She's been here before.
Yes, totally, because she's being too overexposed. So that's kind of what I meant by saying, like, this is feeling content farm. This is like too soon. We need more space between albums. And I guess everybody read that, me sharing an opinion as like, I am anti Taylor Swift. And I'm sure that, of course, we've spoken critically about Taylor Swift on this podcast before, but I have never once said I'm not a Swiftie. I listen to her music all the time. She's always in my top Spotify artists. I'm going to the Eras tour obviously tonight, but also tomorrow on my own with a friend. Like, I am in the fandom, and I thought it was so interesting that the reaction from people, and a lot of people that I know, like that are my friends in real life, couldn't grapple with the fact that like I could be critical of her over what I feel like is too much music all at once, too close together, especially with Eras tour in the middle, to that means you hate Taylor Swift and you can't like her. Those two things can't exist at once.
Yes, I do have a theory about why that's happening so much right now. And something I was criticized for on the other side in the newsletter was saying that this like trend of excess consumption is not even necessarily being driven by Taylor Swift herself. Like, she is not saying, come to the Eras tour in your costume, make sure you make friendship bracelets. These are fan projects. These are things that we decided to ourselves. I did cop some heat for exempting her from responsibility.
Really?
Yeah. Not as much, but like a little bit of people saying like, no, she does encourage a lot of consumption. And I think that is definitely true. Like, I'm happy to take that feedback. But I think the very strong reaction to any perceived or real criticism or like quote unquote hate of Taylor is being driven by how exploitative the media has been in the past 12 months. They've really just absolutely hammered her name for clicks. Like, in Australia at the moment, obviously there's been a really big build up to Eras tour here because we haven't had a Taylor Swift concert here in a really long time. It is wall to wall Taylor Swift inserted into every piece of like media, TV, radio, print, digital, podcasts. We're obviously a part of that too. But I understand that like the media is just really riding on her name right now. It is outrageous. Some of the ways that her name is being used is so unnecessary. There was a live cross on multiple broadcast like TV news stations when Travis Kelce's jet was landing in Sydney. That did not need to be on the TV news. Like, it's just not a thing that needed to happen. But my favorite was a piece by The Guardian. So Taylor Swift ate out at a restaurant in Sydney. Like, wow, oh my gosh, the girl eats. It happened to be nearby the Guardian Australia's offices. And so they wrote a story that the headline of this piece was, "Scoop, Taylor Swift eats in restaurant and we missed the story." And literally, this is the opening of the piece. "It takes less than a minute to walk from Guardian Australia's office to Pellegrino 2000, a tiny Italian restaurant in Sydney, Surrey Hills. So it could be safely assumed that when Taylor Swift dined at the eatery on Tuesday evening, it would be well documented by our crack team. Or not." The whole piece was just the fact that she ate near where their office was and they didn't know about it. So I understand that if you are not necessarily a fan of Taylor Swift, This amount of just like over the top coverage is so annoying.
Yeah.
If you're not into it, this really does feel like she's being forced down your throat.
Yeah.
And so if you're not a fan, that is prompting some very strong reactions to her and kind of blaming her for what the media is doing with her name. And that's creating, in turn, a really tense dynamic between fans and non-fans, because the non-fans are going, we're sick of hearing about it. Shut up. Not everybody cares about Taylor Swift. Her music's shit. Blah, 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 all of these things, which may or may not be true. And the fans defensively are saying, you're just being a hater, you don't understand. And so it's creating a toxic dynamic, but she hasn't necessarily contributed to that herself. It's really been a media pylon that's creating this very yucky environment.
Yeah, totally. And then it's Swifties or fans deciding if you have any, because of this dynamic, if you have any critical thought around Taylor Swift at the moment, that you're just a hater. Like, you don't understand. You're not part of us.
And it's a real knee-jerk reaction and preemptive too. Like, even if it's just a headline, it might not even be that people are reading the stories. And I mean, that happens on all kinds of topics all the time. But there is a real knee-jerk reaction to saying, that's not what she's like. That's not what her music is about. That's not what she stands for, and not engaging any further than to just shut down the criticism. Yeah,
100%. Well, on to more about Taylor Swift's fans. While Swifties are certainly a more powerful fandom than most, the dynamics of a fan base and how that fan base protects their fan object is quite uniform. We've discussed the culture of toxic fandoms and even the concept of famous fans in previous episodes, so we won't go too in-depth here. But first, let's differentiate between a fan and someone who is in a fandom. A fan is someone who consumes content, enjoys the content, and leaves it at that. They could be a fan of a creator's content, a TV show, a movie franchise, or an artist's music, but they will not go deeper than surface-level enjoyment. Fandamentals.com defines a fandom as, quote, a group of more involved fans who invest time in analyzing it and generating content from it, from blog posts to think pieces to fan fiction or fan art. These fans also tend to seek interaction with the people involved with the stories. They tweet, they write open letters, they attend and create conventions. It's subculture. Okay, so based on that, we're both actually in the Swiftie fandom.
Yeah, I think we are.
We create a lot of content around her for our own publications.
We do, but it would be interesting to think about whether we would do that if we didn't run media businesses.
Yeah, true. No, I wouldn't.
No. So maybe
I
would. I feel like I'd get into Reddits, yeah.
Yeah. The biggest difference between a fan and being part of a fandom is how your interest in a celebrity, influencer, or piece of media impacts your identity. People that become part of a fandom make that part of their identity. And thus, being a fan is this one thing that becomes like a part of your life, almost like a hobby. The culture around Eras Tour is interesting, though, because it feels like it's turned a lot of general fans into members of the fandom, as this specific tour almost has its own subculture. Like, one of the things Pierce, who's loyal listener, love you, girl. She messaged me when I posted my tickets being like, oh my God, do you understand what the show is about? Like, do you understand the culture around this show? Because she thought that I wasn't like a huge fan. And I thought that was such an interesting question, because it made me reflect on the fact that, like, going to Eras, there are these little things that kind of set you apart, as, you know, you're just there for the event or you're there because of Taylor. And I think most people, even if they were just general, like, surface level fans, are trying to lean in a little bit more because you don't want to get left behind.
Yeah, I think about it a little bit different, actually. I feel like the Eras Tour is, you know, it's like the lights coming on at the end of the night in the nightclub, and you think that it's just like you and a small group of people who you've been interacting with that are left in this club. But the lights come on and you're like, oh shit, there's a lot of people still in here. It's been really revealing how big her fandom actually is, and how everyday fans are still quite engaged with the lore and the Easter eggs and, you know, the history, even though they are not necessarily making TikToks about it, or, you know, participating in the Reddit threads about it, or having those discussions, or generating that content in the way that I guess a fandom is defined. They are still very involved. Just because they haven't been vocal about it doesn't mean that they were never there and that they haven't been there from the beginning, because this is such a big moment. It's such a celebratory moment in her career. It's brought all of the fans kind of like out of the woodwork. Not that they were hiding, but like, we just had other shit to do.
Yeah. I agree with that. I guess then that begs the question, like, is there such thing as a casual Taylor Swift fan?
Yeah.
When she can get all of these casual fans, in theory, though, to spend so much money and to engage in all of the things like the friendship bracelets and whatever. Like, I would have considered myself a casual fan before this, but now I'm like, okay, I guess I'm a Swiftie.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I do think it's hard to analyze that fairly from Australia because we don't necessarily get as many big gigs and big concerts all the time. Sure. So I think from, like an APAC perspective, but also like perhaps Europe, perhaps South America, this is a big opportunity. And there is a sense, I think, that it's going to be a long time between tours. Big shows. Yeah. You know what I mean? So everyone's kind of keen to go all out because it might be the last one for a long time. It might be the last one that, a mother goes to with a daughter who's like 10 or 11. The next time around, the daughter's probably going to go on her own with her own friends in like 10 years' time. So I do think it's hard to get a good read on that from Australia.
Yeah, fair enough.
I also think that there's a tendency in media, and we definitely contribute to this, to focus on only the really, really intense extreme examples of fandom, when the reality is this is a huge group of people. The bulk of people are participating in this in like a normal, healthy way.
Yes, yeah. I mean, even my friends who I would consider Swifties are like normal about it, I hope. Unless I find out that they're like, they have like burner accounts and they're like commenting and shit on Reddit and stuff. But you know what I mean? Like, as far as I know, even my most diehard Swiftie friends are like normal.
Yes.
Including you.
Including me.
So media psychologists suggest that the stigmatization of fandoms leads people to internalize acceptable and unacceptable ways of being a fan. There are two main ways that they internalize this. Number one, they turn inward and police their fandoms. So this includes bullying other fans with abuse, purity tests, and at the most extreme, antisocial behaviors like threats to other fans. The second is that they project this onto the entity that they are a fan of, like the celebrity, the influencer, the writers of their favorite TV show, which often manifests as entitled behavior and requests. So it's these behaviors where we get the term toxic fandom from, and this is a label that is often placed on Swifties, although I would say the Swifties are not so much engaging in number two. They're not so much going and directing their toxicity towards Taylor. It's more so within the fandoms and the people outside of the fandoms. In broad terms, a toxic fandom is a buzzy term used mostly by media to identify pop culture and internet culture fans that engage in negative or unacceptable behavior in association with their fandom. This can include gatekeeping, entitled behavior, and doxing or harassing those who criticize their fan object. Sasha Samlal for The Conversation argues that shame is an integral part of the Swiftie fandom and why they have become such a powerful and tight-knit community. This isn't totally unique to Taylor Swift's fandom. This shame is present throughout fandoms for pop stars more broadly. As pop music is typically associated with young women, being the fan of a pop star is considered immature, unserious, or lacking in taste. And as a result, fans become protective of their fandom. So the toxic behaviors we see sometimes from the Swiftie fandom arguably operates from the outside in. Swifties are shamed for liking a girly pop star who makes unserious or juvenile music, and this shame leads them to retreat further into the fandom as a safe space. This safe space fosters an even deeper connection with their fan community and Taylor herself, and they become protective of this safe space. And the toxicity we see from really hardcore fandoms like the Swifties manifests from this protectiveness. As Naina Yadav writes for The Swaddle, quote, "The genesis of this overzealous defense can be traced to a history of mistreatment faced by women. Historical parallels with the cult-like devotion to figures like Princess Diana and Taylor Swift, white women dearly loved by the masses, reveals that when media mistreatment occurs, it triggers a savior complex in those who perceive it as a personal affront. The mistreatment transforms into a personal crusade for those whose sense of purpose is deeply rooted in the public existence of these icons." And some recent examples of the Swifties engaging in toxic behavior. In 2020, Swifties doxed Pitchfork critic Gillian Maps for giving Folklore an 8 out of 10, causing the Metacritic score to drop from 89 to 90. Despite Mapes' positive review where she compared Taylor to Jane Eyre and previous Pitchfork reviews comparing her to Joni Mitchell, she faced death threats and harassment for giving Folklore an 8 out of 10. Another critic, Chris Pinella, received death threats, homophobic slurs, accusations of being a pedophile, and more for critiquing the Eras Tour, again, in a largely positive piece, which outlined very few issues.
Yeah, toxic.
Yeah, so it can be very toxic in here, guys.
I mean, as a Folklore girly, I think that album is perfect.
It's an 11 out of 10.
It's an 11 out of 10 for me. If it was an 8 out of 10 for Gillian, that's fine. But I think, like we were saying, there is always going to be these outlier individuals within the group that are engaging in these dangerous, this is dangerous behavior that then ends up branding the bulk of the group, even though she has millions and millions and millions of fans around the world. Mm-hmm. This is not representative of the bulk, but that's what we'll see reported on.
Yeah, including here on Infinite Scroll. Okay, so how do Swifties project their protection of the fandom and of Taylor Swift? We have a few different theories here. The first is through infantilizing Taylor Swift, and this kind of goes hand in hand with how kind of quirky and weird Taylor is, just as a girly herself. So similar to Selena Gomez and other female pop stars that we watched grow up in the spotlight, Swifties infantilize Taylor. This is probably partly because the Swifties feel like many of Taylor's songs speak to their own experiences of girlhood, and also partly because Taylor remained relatively conservative and not over-sexualized in her early career. She has always kind of felt like the girl next door. And Taylor is just kind of, like I said, quirky and weird, which makes her relatable to so many girls and women around the world. Despite her unprecedented fame and success, Taylor does not feel untouchable or otherworldly like other pop stars in her stratosphere feel.
For someone so famous who has to interact with new people and other famous people and very impressive people all the time, she still has that awkwardness that you felt as a preteen when you didn't really know how to interact with adults that you weren't very familiar with, that you felt awkward to meet new people and new friends. She exhibits some of those behaviors still, even now that she's, a fully grown adult woman who is in full command of her the peak of her industry. She's still just an awkward little preteen at heart, and that's what people relate to.
But I think it's that relatability that fuels the constant comparisons.
Yeah. And they inhabit that more traditional celebrity role because they haven't had that one-to-one contact with their fans for, at this point, like almost 20 years.
Yeah, 100%. And Taylor has also been perceived as a perpetual underdog by her fandom since the beginning of her career, and has lent into that reputation with songs like You Belong With Me and Look What You Made Me Do. Critics have long been irritated by this narrative about Taylor, claiming she likes to play, quote-unquote, the victim. So Constance Grady for Vox writes, quote, "The video of her first single off Reputation, Look What You Made Me Do, concluded with a lineup of Swifts spouting the most common critiques of Taylor Swift at each other. Her surprised face is annoying, and she constantly plays the victim." The subtext was clear. Taylor Swift knows that some people don't like her, and she knows why. And she wants to be very clear that she doesn't like them either. And that for the record, none of the bad things she's done are actually her fault. It's all stuff that someone else made her do. Similarly, of the Reputation era, NPR Music said, quote, "She squandered that chance to play the villain. She'd rather be the victim, which is a stale posture for her by now." Kind of savage. Okay.
A little bit sassy there, NPR.
Yeah. And of course, Taylor has received her fair share of mistreatment from the media and the music industry at large in her earlier career, particularly when we consider the 2009 VMAs, which we will get into in a minute. However, Taylor is not the underdog anymore. Yes, she is still mistreated in the media and her name is exploited to death for clicks and views. And of course, as we mentioned before, we are participating in that right now too. But Taylor has become one of the highest selling music artists of all time. And as of 2023, she is now the richest female musician and the first billionaire in history with music as the main source of income. Quote, she's up there among the greatest of music legends and has cemented her legacy as a formidable, culturally evergreen artist, writes Yadav. Taylor Swift today is a phenomenon as much as she is an artist. The question then arises, does that make any critique of her work invalid or illegitimate?
The best explanation I've seen of this concept that someone very, very successful can still kind of like play the underdog is an outline essay from 2019 called A Decade of Sore Winners. It is one of my favorite pieces of writing and cultural criticism maybe ever. It's so good. And it doesn't just focus on Taylor Swift, although it looks at her quite a lot, but applies that concept more broadly to culture and politics. I'll just read a little bit from it. In the piece, B.D. McClay writes, the sore winner operates in a shrinking world. There's less and less of everything, and there's nothing to do about it except win. So if you want to go on winning without becoming an asshole, you need some way to always identify something bigger than you are, something holding you back. The sore winner wants acclaim but not responsibility, respect without disagreement, wealth without scrutiny, power without anyone noticing it's there. It's a delicate line to walk, but it's not impossible. Examples of sore winners that McClay gives in his piece include Donald Trump, Marvel fans, and really superhero or comic book fans in general, and also the directors of Marvel films who are angry at Martin Scorsese for not loving their work.
Oh my God.
Adult gifted children, which I feel very called out by.
Adult gifted, so children who are gifted as adults now.
Yes.
Like who have grown up to
Like who are now grown. New York Times columnists, who I think would probably overlap quite a lot with the adult gifted children, and most billionaires and tech platform CEOs.
100%.
Taylor Swift and her fans fall very easily into this category. McClay writes, she never really got the respect she deserved for writing her own songs and playing her own guitar or carefully managing a crossover from country to pop without alienating her old fans. But at $360 million, at what point are we dealing with what amounts to small change? At what point is it fair to say that Swift won, even if that winning does not come with universal adoration and approval?
And it's never going to. There's always going to be people that don't like you. I think that's kind of what Dr. Georgia Carroll was saying in her recap of her thesis and her research, was that Taylor Swift and Taylor Nation, the brand behind Taylor Swift, is so obsessed with being liked. Like there is just this intrinsic need for her to still be this people pleaser. And that's why they reward fans constantly for being the right fans, the biggest fans, things like that. Because a lot of the behaviors that we're seeing can be not like toxic necessarily, but a bit exploitative sometimes of the fandom.
Oh, absolutely. Like she is basically surveilling them.
Yes.
Right. I saw in the comment section of a critical TikTok that was talking about the politics of Taylor Swift and whether or not she does enough. Of course, there were heaps of fans that were defending her, as is their prerogative. They're allowed to do that. And someone had commented in reply to a Swiftie saying, she's not going to see this. She's not going to pick you. But actually, she might. They do look at what Swifties are writing about her online. They do identify individual fans, send them handwritten letters, invite them to shows, send them gifts. It's real.
Yeah, 100%.
You might actually get picked.
It's putting the fear of Taylor Swift in them. Like the fear of God, the fear of Taylor Swift. Like Big Brother. In an already very intense surveillance culture, which maybe is another episode you can do another day. Not for today.
The origin story of Swift as this idea of a sore winner and a perpetual underdog, no matter how successful she gets, really does trace back to the 2009 VMAs and the I'ma let you finish.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Controversy and the continued antagonization that Kanye did towards Swift for quite some time afterwards.
He actually sings about her or put her in his new song. I saw this morning.
Okay, so we're like 15 years on at this point. It's still going. So a lot of this self-victimhood does kind of trace back to this moment, which is why we kicked off the episode there. And look, I think we should say it was an objectively mean and unfair thing for Kanye to do to Swift, who at that time was very young and she was a very new artist. You can't think of her now as the superstar in that position. She was a young girl who was just breaking out of the safe space of country into the broader mainstream pop culture for the first time. It would have been terrifying. I would not have handled it
would
any
have been
better.
horrible.
Writer Sean O'Neill told Billboard, quote, "Whatever fun there was to be had in this spontaneous moment of a famously unabashed jerk behaving like one, then writing an all-caps rant about it was pretty short-lived. Almost immediately, it became this flashpoint for discussion on race, on sexism, on attitudes towards pop music, on mental health." This, as well as the very sexist and demeaning media coverage of Swift's music, not only up until that point, but after that point for a very long time, as being just about her exes, would become the ultimate shield against any criticism of Taylor Swift or her music. Even when the criticism is being done in good faith, fans will say it's just coming from haters who, like Kanye, are angry at Swift's success for no good reason. When I say that this moment was so pivotal, not just for Taylor Swift and her career, but for so many people who were in attendance and won awards at the 2009 VMAs, I really, really mean it. For the next 15 years, Kanye, Taylor, and Beyonce have all remained really characterized by the roles that they played in this particular moment. So Kanye, as we know, continued on as this really unpredictable agitator, not just to Taylor, but to a bunch of other people and artists within the industry and in general pop culture and entertainment. Taylor would continue to be the victim of a male-dominated culture that wanted to undercut her success and her salience with young women. And Beyonce would continue to be the gracious star who was being held to an even higher standard than everybody else. It really did not change ever since that moment.
It's like these caricatures that they've become now.
Yes, there was no getting out of that. And it's almost like fate. I was saying this to you before. I'm not a super woo-woo type of person, but it's like all of their stories were always going to converge at this point, and everything that was going to happen after that point happened. It all played out exactly as it was always going to.
Yeah, and want to make clear, us exploring the 2009 VMAs and how it was actually so culturally impactful is not us saying that Kanye made Taylor famous. Like, that is not what we're saying here. But I think that often that criticism, that's like the counter argument that Taylor Swift fans have to anybody exploring what happened on that stage is like, well, you just want Kanye to, you're just giving Kanye the credit for Taylor Swift's success, because that's obviously what he has tried to say over and over again in his music. And it's not that's not what we're saying. We just think that this particular award show genuinely did change the way that pop culture has functioned in entertainment, and of course, thus Taylor's career. Like, Eras Tour would not exist without this moment.
Yes, let me tell you why. So this award show was actually the catalyst for a chain of events that ultimately would give us the very concept of Taylor's version re-records and the concept of eras of her music, because the VMAs, I couldn't believe it when I uncovered this, they essentially launched Scooter Braun's mainstream record label / artist management career, which, as we know, this leads to the second major moment of underdog triumph for Taylor, which was being denied her masters and having to re-record the first 6 albums as Taylor's versions. From 2002, Scooter had been working with So So Def Recordings in like a marketing capacity. So he was really overseeing all of their events and parties. And he left that role because he wanted to get more into the talent management side of things and the music publishing side of things. And he wasn't kind of like getting those opportunities. He couldn't crack out of just the marketing and the party side. So he left, did some traveling with his brother, took some time to figure it out. In 2007, a college student and aspiring artist called Asher Roth reached out to Scooter on MySpace and asked if he would represent him. Scooter decides to go for it. Asher is his first signing, and just a few months after that, he also signs Justin Bieber. And he decides to build a business plan around just these 2 artists. He knows that they've got enough money to operate for 14 months, so they're just going to make a bunch of singles. They're going to rely really heavily on making music videos and see if anything cuts through to the mainstream, see if they can crack it. According to an interview with Billboard, at month 13 of this 14-month runway that they had, Asher records the song I Love College, and with Scooter Braun, they make a video clip for it. The song is released in January 2008. It becomes a hit, and it ultimately gets nominated for 2 awards at the 2009 MTV VMAs. I didn't know this song. I think maybe it was more of a North American thing. I don't remember it, but you said that it was really, really big when you were in
Yeah, we loved it. We would sing it all the time. We'd play it all the time at every single like kegger, every pre-drink. And it would just be like, it was like an anthem, like an anthem, a love song, an ode to our time at university.
Very party vibes.
Yes, it was like LMFAO era. It's nothing like LMFAO, but it's like that era of like an ode to partying in your like youth, you know?
And the crazy part of all of this is that Justin Bieber, who often I think Justin is talked about as being the catalyst that like made Scooter Braun's career, he didn't get the big signing onto Island Records until October 2008. So that was like almost, you know, that's like 10 months after I Love College came out. And Justin's first single didn't come out till mid-2009. So if it wasn't for this like mainstream breakthrough and success of I Love College, Scooter Braun's artist management business, it wouldn't have survived long enough to actually get to the Justin Bieber point. He wouldn't have been able to launch Justin like that because Justin wasn't ready. So although we won't know exactly how everything would have played out, it's entirely possible that he never would have made it big enough to get to the position where he could then, in 2019, buy Big Machine and buy Taylor's Masters.
That is just so wild. So basically the moral of this story is that Asher Roth is enemy number 1 for the Swifties.
Is he? Or is Asher Roth who we say thank you for Ira's and Taylor's version?
True, actually.
It was like a domino. That was one of the first dominoes to fall that just set off this chain of events, which has kind of led us to where we are now and has led us to the cultural environment that we're in now where I guess Swift fandom is so ubiquitous. It's so everywhere. It's so universal. It all really comes back to what happened at this one award show. Yeah,
that is so freaking wild. But I mean, that's kind of where we're at now, right? Is there's a lot of emerging discourse, which is part of this episode, about the fact that, you know, people are unable to critique one of the most famous, if not the most powerful woman in pop culture at the moment, at least in pop music, without severe consequence and backlash. And what do we think that means for the future of like genuinely society?
It's a concern to me. I mean, we are in the media business, so of course this is going to feel like a concern to us. But pop culture is culture. Culture it's us as human beings. It tells us about the societies that we build, about our humanity. And I think that it's really important that we're able to have critical discussions about it, that we're able to discuss these things and what they mean for us. Because if we can't do that about the biggest pop star in the world right now, in this particular moment, I think a lot of things start to fall apart from there. We end up very siloed and not able to have discussions that cut across groups and apply to like bigger and bigger kind of like swathes of people.
Yeah, we need to stop with this mentality of, you know, just being able to say one single thing, like branding somebody a hater or a troll, or saying you just don't want girls to have fun. Like these kind of like catch-all slaps. I don't know what the right word is.
Down.
Like like stamps that shut down conversation. It's becoming so much more common online.
Yeah, and you know, like we were discussing before, I think if we want other people to do this, if we want, you know, toxic masculinity to be something that we examine and reflect on and kind of like critique, if we want white supremacy to be something that we critique, if we want religion to be something that we critique, we have to be able to do it to the comparatively lower stakes pop culture and entertainment sphere. Like if we can't do that, how is it possible that we'd be able to handle conversations about the bigger stuff?
Exactly.
Heavy.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We are going to go to the Era store now. We're going to go put on our outfits and do our hair and get ready. Infinite Scroll is a podcast written, produced, and presented by me, Lauren Meisner, for Centennial World. Additional research and reporting this week was by Crystal Andrews. Thank you guys so much for listening. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.